Now let's talk with Barbara Lundblad. Barbara, it seems like so often in the life of the church, the time that we think about people with disabilities is around building campaigns, when we're renovating the building, but I think you're pushing us to do more than that, more than think about the physical space.
Well, I'm pushing people to also think about the text, because in so many of those Bible texts that we have, everybody is always cured. And so you imagine people sitting in the congregation who won't be cured. And is there ever any good news for them? And somebody like Nancy Mayers, the author I talked about, really pushes us. I mean, to think of people with disabilities as whole people rather than partial people.
If I can follow up on that, I couldn't help but listen to her words against the words of Jesus, where he says that this woman has been, sort of in captivity to Satan for 18 years. I mean, how do you, as somebody who wrestles with the text, make sense of that statement?
Well, I think that's a very tough part of the text, and I sort of skipped over it, as preachers sometimes do.
Sorry.
But no, I mean, I think in some ways, I did a workshop a few years ago with another Nancy named Nancy Eastland, who just died this last year, and she said to me, "You have to put the person with the disability in the speaking center." So I thought, that's hard to do, and I think in that case, I would really, in a longer sermon, I would want to struggle with that part about Satan binding her, because that sort of leads into the whole issue of people being punished somehow for having a disability.
Well, your message reminded me, Barbara, in my parish, we have a woman in a wheelchair that takes part in this service by doing one of the readings.
Oh, great.
And it really calls attention to the idea that someone allowed and encouraged this to happen. And I wonder, for both of you, I guess, are our churches conscious about trying to engage people with disabilities, or is it really just a building campaign? I'm sure there are many people that watch our program who aren't able to go out to church that get spiritual nourishment from what we're doing. So is it something that really needs to become more in conversation to really actively engage people with disabilities?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think when you say that someone who is in a wheelchair does the readings, I mean, do people in a wheelchair ever serve communion? When you receive the bread or the cup from someone in a wheelchair, you're suddenly aware that that person is there. I think we could do much more. Somebody told me not long ago that 93% of households that include a person with a disability are unchurched.
That's a fascinating number.
Incredible.
Yeah.
93%.
I can imagine that's true. I think sometimes in churches we get overly smug about what we have done. I remember at my church, somebody arrived in a wheelchair and they said, where can I sit? And I felt good about the fact that we had this place here and this, and they said, why don't you have that in the middle of the pews? We're always asked to either sit at the back of the church or in the very front row, and why can't we choose? And I thought, gosh, just having multiple options would make such a difference.
That's great, because that's, I think people with disabilities have so much to teach us here, and there's some wonderful poems about disability written by people with disabilities, and one of the things they said is that, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be embarrassed. You're going to say the wrong thing, but I think we have to be willing to just be embarrassed because it's really worth it to be able to do things in a different way than we now do them.
And to your example, when we notice people with disabilities, they really bring us into the moment in a different way, don't they? To not only be grateful for perhaps what we have, our health in that regard, but also to think about what they need to encounter on a daily basis. And your example about a bus in New York City is just a fascinating one, because everyone's running 1,000,000 miles a minute there. So that happens so rarely. I can relate to that.
Really, I'm always so surprised, that people just don't get up and get in a, sort of angry about it. But I've seen it many times. People just sit there and wait. And I think, that kind of access to be able to go places, to be able to be on your own, I think is such an important gift.
I want to go back to the biblical story again, and the idea of this woman, and you talked about the cultural context that people might have believed that she had done something to bring this osteoporosis upon herself, or that her ancestor had done something wrong. Do you think some of that still continues today and is part of our discomfort with this topic?
Oh, I think so. I mean, even though rationally we would like to not believe that, I think that we want to have an explanation for something, and either you maybe say that it's the fault of Satan, that power of evil in the world, or that it's some kind of punishment. I think people feel that in their bones, even though they might, be arguing with themselves about it. But I think that kind of feeling is very, very strong, even with people that are thinking people. And I was in a workshop once where there were several people with cerebral palsy, and they said one of the things we think about a lot, we talk about among ourselves, is if I could take a pill tonight and wake up completely free of CP, would I do it? And she said she was very clear she would never take that pill. I mean, she was saying, this is who I am.
Right.
I couldn't imagine.
This has shaped my personality.
Right. She said, I wouldn't want to be in heaven, she also said, as somebody who wasn't in a motorized scooter. So, boy, I mean, from my perspective, I assume, she would want to take that pill.
Yeah.
We're so grateful for you bringing this to the conversation today, Barbara. I want to shift gears just a little bit in the time we have left. You're an expert at the art of preaching. And I want to ask both you and Lillian, as pastors and so forth, what makes a great preacher? What are our viewers looking for, or what in your mind makes a great preacher? We have so many great guests on this program, but what do you think about that? Just curious.
Well, I mean, it's hard. It would take us another whole
2
show.
hours, right?
For me, it is that place where there is a deep connection between the scripture text and the text of the community. And if there isn't that connection with people, if you don't care at least as much about the people as you do about that text, then you really should read the text and stay home, or let the people read the text on their own. So for me, it's that really electric moment where there's a meeting between that scripture text and the text of the people's lives.
Well, and I can imagine that you would be very disappointed if our viewers left this program not remembering what the Bible text was, that you really implanted that in our minds in a different way by connecting it to present-day reality, giving us an image and really taking us into that character.
Is that teachable? Do some people have more of an affinity towards that naturally, to sense that they're connecting with the community, or is it something that's
I think everybody can learn that.
Okay.
I think some people come to preaching as you would come to dancing or painting or singing, with some gifts, and even I could learn to be a better dancer. I mean, that would be great. But I think it's a matter of paying attention and honoring people, really saying to yourself, these people are as important as this text. And some people don't believe that. I think, you have to talk to people, get to know them, listen to them, and I think anybody can learn that.
Well, you honor all of us by being here today and helping us to see that text in an entirely new way. So thank you, Barb.